Some of us feel really sad when someone dies, and some of us feel really angry, but some of us feel nothing at all. Emotional numbness can be linked with a type of grief called inhibited grief, which is characterized by suppressed emotions. So let's talk about why it happens and what you can do about it. So what's the difference between inhibitive and delayed grief? Inhibitive grief is when you ignore the loss completely because facing it is just too painful, it's just too hard. Whereas delayed grief is when you don't feel the pain of loss right away, often because you suffered another loss right beforehand, and therefore you're distracted in your brain because your brain is still processing the first loss. So how do you know if you have it? Well, people with inhibited grief often show very few outward signs of mourning. You're not seeing them sad looking or crying, but instead they may begin to experience physical symptoms that are outward manifestations of their emotions. Symptoms could be muscle tension, insomnia, lack of appetite, depression, anxiety, nightmares, digestive problems. So these issues will only worsen if you continue to ignore your grief. And so why does traumatic loss often lead to inhibitive grief? Well, if you lose a loved one in a traumatic, sudden way, processing the loss might simply be too much for you. So instead of talking about it, facing it, or otherwise accepting the loss, you push it away. But traumatic grief is hard enough without adding the pain of leaving it unresolved. And then I'm also asked, why are some people more likely to experience inhibitive grief? Well, in some families, it's a sign of weakness to cry or show emotion. So if you grew up this way, you were trained to hold in your emotions and not feel the pain of loss. This will therefore make you more susceptible to inhibitive grief. So if you're feeling nothing in your loss right now, don't panic. Inhibitive or delayed grief does not often last, very rarely does it, but you do need to move towards processing that grief. I'm happy to help any way I can. Just reach out. I'd be honored to be your personal coach through this. And above all else, keep going. Thanks for being nice.